Hi guys, I'm going to make a sewing bag today for my accessories. Good. And I'm not going to do a paper pattern, I'm just going to mark it out on the fabric because it's actually quite straight. If your fabric's not straight, you probably want to just do a pattern first to make sure you can get it nice and straight on the fabric. I'm making my bag at 47 by 40 centimetres. So I've marked that size out and I've allowed another 3 centimetres at the top just to fold it over. And I also want to do side panels that are about 5 centimetres wide, so I need to draw those up as well and add seam allowance to those too. So I'll do those now. And I want them to run along the same seam line. So for the bottom section I'm going to measure it up the same way, and then for the side pieces I'll do them up this way. And I'm just going to add a 1 centimetre seam allowance. So you need the seam allowance on each side, so because I want it 5 centimetres wide I need to mark it up at 7 centimetres. I'll just use a ruler and try to get a nice straight line. So that's the bottom part. I've also actually put this on the fold, but I'll cut that in half when I'm done. And I'll only cut one of these because I only need one. So the bag's 40 high, then we have this extra 3 centimetres here. It's 43, so we want that the same length. I've got enough fabric. It's actually exactly the right size. So we'll just do that 7 centimetres wide, and we do need 2 of those. I'll cut it on the fold and I'll just cut it afterwards. So mark the 7 centimetres in 2 spots so you can get a nice straight line. And right S for sides. And you can cut that out with fabric scissors. In here as well, because that looks a bit narrow. Okay, so we just need to cut straight as we can down the fold. I'll just mark an S on that piece as well, so I know what it's for. pieces go, so we only need one of these. I'll put a few more pins before I cut this along the fold to make sure it's nice and neat and straight. Okay, now we'll look at the side pieces. I'll just pin them on. And just make sure your fabric matches the correct way. You don't want to put it inside out, otherwise it's going to look different. So it's really important. And just pin the first side piece on. Okay, so the camera cut out, sorry about that. After I pinned the side pieces to the bag, I just did a overlocking or serging stitch on the seams, and then I also finished the seams off with a straight stitch on the sewing machine. Now you can do this two ways. I've just overlocked them together. If you really want, you can overlock them separately and then do your stitching down the side and then have them out flat, if that's your preference, but I think this is an easier way to do it, and it's only for a bag. So, and I'm just going to do the same thing now. So I've got both sides now attached, and I've just got one more side piece. So I'll pin that as well, and then I'm going to go back and I'll do the same thing. I'll overlock it together and then stitch the seam line. And I may have made a mistake. We'll see how this goes. It might have actually been easier if I had the bottom piece and I attached it to the side sections first at the bottom of the bag, but I haven't done it that way, so we'll see how it works out. But I'm already committed now, so I'm just going to do exactly what I did with the first part, and then I'll see how I go with the bottom piece after. And I did also mark out that seam line that I want at the top, so that I have a big fold at the top of the bag, so that's just marked up on both sides rather than just one. It's just easier to know what you're doing when you're finished. And again, when you pin this, you just also want to make sure it's in the right way. So we've got the seam lines here, and this is the good side of the bag. So we just want to make sure that this is on the right side as well. So that's the outside with the chalk mark on it. So we're just going to pin it this way, so that's right sides together. And try to keep it as neat as you can. It just gives you a better finish. If you don't have a serger or an overlocking machine, you can always use zigzag to finish off your seams, or you can just do the little French seams where you fold them under twice and sew them down. Depends on how much your fabric frays and how good you are at sewing. Okay, so I've pinned this side as well now. And as you can see, the seam's going to be on the same side as the other side. And so we're just going to do our overlock or serging stitch down the side here. And then we'll do a straight stitch with the sewing machine to finish that off, and we'll do that on both sides. And so then it'll just start to look a bit more like a bag. Okay, well, I'm back after doing that stitching, and I'm going to be honest, that was a pain. So yeah, if you're making this bag at home yourself, seriously, save yourself a lot of time and a lot of struggles by making sure that you sew the side panels, the whole 3 of them. Sew all of those together first and then attach your front and back, because yeah, it's a lot easier. I mean, I got mine done. I've got one tiny little pucker, but it's barely visible, so I'm not going to worry about it. But even things like, it was even hard to do the serging, of course, because you're coming into corners and things like that. So yeah, do it the other way and save yourself like a huge headache. Okay, so I'll just zoom back down or move back down to the project. Okay, so I also, when I went and did that, I went ahead and I serged the top of the bag as well, because it was just fraying so much. I didn't want it to fray anymore while I was pinning it. So I got that done as well along the edging at the top. Okay, so we've got the marking that was made earlier, and I'm just going to now, because I wanted a nice neat edge at the top of the bag, like nice and thick. I just think that looks a little bit nicer. I mean, you don't have to do that, but that's how I wanted it done. So I'm just now going to fold that down, and I'll pin that as well now. Just fold that along that line and try to obviously get it as neat as possible, because the neater it is, the better it looks. And just another thing to take note of, I did actually sew one the wrong way here, but with your seam lines, try to keep them in the same position. So like, for example, if this one's out, you don't want it then turned in. It's going to sit a lot better for you and look a lot better if you keep them in the same direction. I did, as I said, mix that one up a little bit, so I'm just going to keep it folded in because that's what I've done down the bottom. But ideally I should have had both around that way. I do on the other side, and it will sit a little bit better. I mean, this is just for me to use at home, so it's okay. It doesn't sort of bother me too much, but if that's something that's going to bother you, or if you wanted to sell them or something like that, then it's definitely something you need to keep an eye on. I'll just pin that. It's also a good idea to just go along and make sure that you're turning down the same amount. So just get a ruler or something like that and just keep track of it, just to make sure it's nice and even. That's also going to give you a neater finish if it's all the same length. It's very hard to see in this light, so I'll use another ruler. It's about 2 centimeters. Again, you don't have to do this, but it just gives you a neater finish. Overall, you know that it's the exact same size, so it's just going to look better. It'll give you a better result in the end. Go along and pin that, just ready to sew it down. Another thing too, if you don't like how it looks with the serger stitch or overlocking stitch, whatever machine you have, if you don't like how that looks folded down on the bag, you can just as easily do a double fold here so that it's hidden. But I don't mind the look of it, and the serging has turned out really neat on this fabric as well. So it actually looks quite good, so I'm happy to leave that exposed. Okay, so I just finished pinning the top section off camera because I thought it was kind of boring to sit there watching me putting pins in. So now that I've pinned that down and I've just measured and made sure it's all pretty much the same width that it's turned down. I'm just going to go and do a nice straight stitch just to finish that off and to make it look nice. And I'll see if I'm happy with the single stitch down there, because I may also put one along the top here. But I think I'm probably just going to like just having the single on there, so I'll go and do that now and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've hemmed the bottom of the ribbons now on both of them, and so now I'm just going to pin them to the bag and place them where I want them. Just going to use my markings here as a guide. Try to get them nice and straight. Okay, I feel like that looks too wide, so I might use that for a guide for this end instead. Okay, that definitely looks better. You can use your ruler just to make sure it's straight if you want. It does make it a bit easier. Just make sure you don't pin through both sides of the bag as well. Measure that again to make sure it's the same. And I'll just check and make sure it's not pinned through both sides, which it is a little bit. And I'll just do the other side. You also just want to make sure that your strap isn't twisted as well. When you put it on, you don't want to twist it and pin it and then realise after you've sewn it that it's twisted. Again, just measure it to make sure it's the same. And it's also a good idea to line up your seams on the side here. Put them together. And then just make sure the straps are even. Yeah, they look pretty good. And I've already done the same thing on the other side, but I'll just check again. And that looks about the same as well. So now we can finish pinning these down. Okay, now I'm going to go and sew them, and I'm going to sew around here and then just up that side and the same thing on that side, and I'll do that to all of the straps. And then I'll come back and show you how it looks. Okay, I'm back with the finished bag. I have my straps all sewn on. Now I actually went ahead and I also stitched just along this seam line at the top. You don't have to do that, you can just go straight up if you like, because doing it that way does leave a little bit of a gap there, but that doesn't actually, I don't know if you can see that well there. But it doesn't bother me because I'm going to add more details to this. So this is just the basic bag. And yeah, I'm going to do a part 2 because I want to goth this bit up. So you can come back and watch part 2. And don't forget, if you like the video, to like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Bye.